of the reasons why I chose to review this phone was because of the huge battery. Battery life is probably one of the most important things in smartphones right now, as everyone is racing to build the thinnest phone. With the huge success of Pokemon Go, this app is killing phones everywhere within 2 to 3 hours, with the best phones like the Galaxy S7 Edge lasting a maximum of 4 to 5 hours. This is the Doogee X5 Max Pro, an $85 phone with a huge battery and decent specs to rep the package. Let's see if battery life is as good as Doogee suggests and whether or not the rest of this phone is able to provide a good user experience. This phone looks better in person than it does in photos, but that doesn't mean that this phone is pretty. The biggest issue are the big bezels, which really make this phone big and less attractive. In fact, it resembles the Amlace MX base, which didn't win any beauty contests either. The phone isn't hopelessly ugly though. The plastic side bezels don't look bad at all and closely resemble aluminum to the casual eye. There are upsides to using plastic, well, good plastic in this case. The plastic used is very durable and this phone feels solid. You do not have to be afraid about scratching it or dropping it. It's quite heavy and thick as well and doesn't feel sleek and minimal. On the back you find the camera, fingerprint sensor, and if removing the back cover you find 3 slots, 2 for SIM cards and 1 for the microSD card slots. To conclude, we have a solid, heavy, and not a very nice looking phone. But as you're playing Pokemon Go, you don't have to worry about dropping it because it's pretty durable. The display here is actually really decent. The 720p 5-inch panel is almost on par with my Xiaomi Redmi 3, which costs almost twice as much. Colors are vivid and can display contrast easily, and the viewing angles are pretty decent as well. I doubt there are going to be a lot of people who will find fault with the display on this phone. The one downside is that the brightness is very low for a smartphone. It tops out at 250 nits, so it's really hard to use in sunlight. Playing Pokemon Go in the bright sun is going to be tough if you cannot find shade. Well, I guess that just means more Pokemon Go sessions in the middle of the night. At some point, you have to stop going for the highest quality audio and just go for decent but loud audio, and Doogee has done almost exactly that. Sound quality is decent enough, there are mids, highs, and bass, not copious amounts, but enough. The volume on this is quite close to the Redmi 3, which means that max volume comes close to hurting my ears, and that should be an indication enough of how loud it is. It is usually playing music and YouTube videos at about 60 to 70% volume. Volume at 100% does get tricky depending on what type of audio you're playing. At this low price point, I think Doogee made the right balance regarding speaker quality and volume. With a huge 4000 mAh battery, you can expect some extremely good battery life. I first ran the web page reload test, reloading a web page every 15 seconds until the phone died after 9 hours and 7 minutes. I then looped the video constantly and the phone died after 11 hours and 29 minutes. These results are pretty insane, and it's pretty far ahead of most flagships nowadays. The thing with these big battery phones is that real life usage is a lot better than lab testing. I could easily get 5 hours of screen on time consisting of web browsing, news, Reddit, and some gaming and still have 38% at the end of the day. Now onto the big question, Pokemon Go. How long can this phone play Pokemon Go for before it dies? And the answer is 6 hours and a few minutes. So far no flagship can come close to that. And don't forget that this is with battery saving mode turned off, because the mode is still glitchy. Apart from Pokemon Go, the phone can hold up to the heaviest use imaginable and still last a full day. It's pretty crazy that this $85 phone outlasts every flagship out there in battery life. Android 6.0 Marshmallow comes pre-installed on the Doogee, and there is a light skin on top of it that reaches as far as the launcher, the icons, and the settings menu. You can replace the stock launcher with something else like Google Now's launcher. Doogee skin feels just as fast and fluid as stock Android. The fingerprint scanner on the back is very good, not just for a cheap phone, but it actually matches the Yumi Super in terms of accuracy. In fact, sloppy finger positioning might actually be a little bit better than the Yumi Super. However, it's not that fast. It's slower than the iPhone 6, but still fast enough that you won't have to wait that long. The scanner on the back can turn the phone off while the screen is off. There is no notification light, sadly, and there are also screen on gestures that work pretty well. The phone comes with 16 gigs of storage, and for some, it will be a little tight. I find myself creeping closer and closer to the limit of my 16 gig Xiaomi Redmi 3 when I have music, podcasts, and a couple of games installed. Performance on this phone, though, is not bad for an $85 phone. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not that good. Launching and switching apps are okay. There's a second or so of pause between opening and closing apps. I was able to play some intense games on the 720p resolution screen, but on lowest settings. I was also able to play Pokemon Go quite easily on this phone, and it works pretty well apart from scrolling through my Pokemon list, which was laggy for some reason. Also, there is no gyroscope, so you can't catch Pokemon with the camera on. You have to turn the AR mode off. I'll talk more about Pokemon Go's GPS performance in the next section below. The phone also scores about 26,000 on Antutu. The Doogee supports quad-band GSM and WCDMA, as well as 5-band LTE. Do check whether your phone will work with your carrier before buying. Reception is generally very good. At least living in a big metropolitan area like Toronto, I get reception most places. My Xiaomi Redmi 3 gets reception, but it switches more often between 4G and 3G. I ran speed tests and got a decent score for 4G as well. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth both work well and I have no complaints there. The GPS module in this phone is pretty decent. Most of the time I use it to navigate to and from work, but after the release of Pokemon Go, I use the GPS a lot more for playing that game. The GPS was pinpoint accurate and I could tell exactly where I was. There wasn't much jumping around. In addition, getting a GPS lock is very quick as well, a little bit quicker than my Xiaomi Redmi 3. You will have no problem playing Pokemon Go on this phone. The camera is where the Doogee X5 Max Pro falls down pretty hard. 5 megapixels is just not enough in this day and age. For a 5 megapixel camera, the pictures aren't actually that bad, as long as you snap photos in good lighting conditions. However, there is some noise and sometimes pictures look washed out even though you're in good lighting, but that only happens sometimes. But low light photos though are really bad, and there is so much noise and grain it's sometimes not even usable for Facebook. The front facing camera is the exact same unit as the rear facing camera, so same story there. The video camera can take 720p video and detail is not all there. Colors are a tiny bit washed out and just overall not a good experience either. The camera is really one part of the phone I was pretty disappointed with. What do you usually get for $85? You usually get a super low-end MTK6737 processor, maybe 1GB of RAM and 8GB of storage. But here we see Doogee shifting the budget market by upgrading to an MTK6737 processor, 2GB of RAM and using a massive battery. At $85, the specs make this a compelling phone. However, this phone is not a good phone in the grand scheme of things. It can't even hold a candle to phones like the Yumi Super. But then again, the Yumi Super costs almost 3 times as much, not to mention the iPhone 6s or the Galaxy S7. Well, back to the Doogee. Even at this low price point, there is one downside, and that is the camera, which takes some pretty bad pictures. With that being said, the camera is the only major flaw in this phone, and if this 5 megapixel camera does not bother you at all, then you've just found the best phone you can buy for $85, and most probably the longest lasting Pokemon Go device in this price point. It even destroys other flagships in terms of battery longevity, not only in Pokemon Go, but in pretty much all other aspects. Thank you so much for watching and be sure to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed that video.